Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and we are here with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better, where we're interviewing executives, authors, and great thinkers about how to make your life better on a regular basis. And this week's guests are David Noble and Carol Kaufman. They're the authors of a new book. It literally just came out on Tuesday. It is called Real-Time Leadership. David and Carol are two top executive coaches sharing their wisdom with the people in this audience and the world now, thanks to their book. David and Carol, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorie. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And to those of you who are tuning in from around the world, please feel free to type your name and where you're dialing in from into the chat box so that we can say hello. And we're going to be taking your questions for David and Carol throughout the course of the conversation. Now, let me start with you, David. The very first question that I have, the premise of real-time leadership, we're talking about, making decisions, coming up with plans in high stress, uncertain environments. You really have to do it in real time these days. I know that one of the topics that you are particularly focused on is this question of how to get ahead of the curve, which, frankly, everybody is concerned about these days when things seem to be moving so fast, when we've got ChatGPT and all of these crazy developments. How do we start thinking about this? How can leaders get ahead of the curve? What does that even mean?
Sure. Thanks, Dorie. So when Carol and I think about real-time leadership, we talk about making every moment matter. And that's whether you're making a split-second decision or working on something really important this calendar quarter or doing even something that works towards a long-term goal. And most leaders make the most of every moment through their deep pattern recognition. So if they see A happen and if they see B happen, they kind of instinctively know that C is the right way to go. So they're relying on their reflexes, basically. That kind of works well in a normal operating environment, but when was the last time we saw one of those? So particularly over the last 3 years, we've found that even really good leaders have been playing catch up to so many issues, whether it's starting with COVID and then supply chain disruptions, armed conflict in the Ukraine, inflation, commodity price volatility, issues at work. It's just the issue list keeps stacking up. And when you try and apply your reflexes in those kind of situations to new types of crises or even new types of big opportunities, your reflexes can lead you in exactly the wrong direction. So real-time leaders for us are about how do you transcend those reflexes so you can get ahead of the curve? So either pivoting really fast when something comes up or even getting ahead of that curve and anticipating things.
That's great. Thank you very much. We're here with David Noble and Carol Kaufman. They're the authors of the new book, Real-Time Leadership. Now, and we would also like to say hi to some of our great friends tuning in from around the world. We've got Rosinda joining from Madrid. Peter is normally in Scotland, but in Barbados this week. Deborah's in Chicago. We have a LinkedIn friend in Seattle. Celio is in Angola. Kathy's in St. Louis. We have a LinkedIn friend from California. Mario's in Peru. Beth is joining from London. And Abderrahman is in Morocco. We're so glad to have all of you, and type your questions for David and Carol into the chat box. Now, Carol, something that I'm curious about, you and David, you've written this book together, but you're not just co-authors, you also coach together frequently, and you have a really kind of interesting and unusual model, which is you double team your clients. Talk to me about that. How did you come up with that, and how does it work? It seems like such an interesting model. How does that add value to the clients?
Oh, it adds value hugely. And we don't do this with everyone. We do this with very complex, high stakes situations. And where there's a lot of volatility in the market and the company and with the particular leader. Like many discoveries, it happened by accident, which was I was coaching this CEO of the biggest company of its size. And he was one of these guys that sort of didn't listen and was very full of himself in a lot of ways. And so I'm coaching him, and he and I actually got along splendidly. And, the big glass office, and I see David walking by because he was working with the team. So I'm like, wait, you have to meet David. So David comes in, we plop down on the couch. And what we notice then is I'm asking a lot of the questions about how do you actually do things as a leader. And David is like, hey, if you how well does your team know your strategy? And then we just realized that we were incredibly complementary to one another. And as David often says, when he was the managing partner of a strategy organization, a big one, he said he didn't come into a big CEO on his own, that he would bring a whole team of people. And given this highest stakes, why not have more than one coach?
That's such a good idea and really creative. I have not heard of other examples of that, but I really love it. So we want to say hi to some of our great friends. Christos is joining from Potter's Bar, UK. Ravi's tuning in from Delhi. Cheryl in Minneapolis. Raja from Oman. Cynthia's in LA. Bless is from the Philippines. Steven's in Silicon Valley. And Carol Ann is in Kilkenny, Ireland. We love having all of you. And we're here with our special guests, David Noble, Carol Kaufman. They're the authors of the book, Real Time Leadership. Now, David, one of the things that you guys talk about in the book is what you call 3D leadership, three-dimensional leadership. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is and why that's important?
Sure, Dorie. So, most of us are familiar with what Carol and I would call one or two-dimensional leaders. So you've got the leaders who are very focused on results, but they tend to drive over top of their people. Or you've got wonderful servant leaders who care a lot about people and unlocking their potential, but find it hard to hold them accountable. So those are literally one or two-dimensional leaders. And we think that you have to be a whole person, a whole human in 3D. And those three dimensions are first being very crystal clear on your goals. That's what we call your external dimension. So what is it that you want and need to get done? The second is more about who do you want to be inside as a human while you're accomplishing those goals. That's about having perspective, fairness, generosity, kindness, listening, and so on. And then the third dimension is once you know what you want to get done and how you want to be, how must you relate to others in order to unlock their potential and achieve goals together? So that's the interpersonal dimension. So all three of those things are inextricably linked. And it's not enough just to have one or two of those things. You got to work on all three.
Yeah, David, really helpful. This is Dorie Clark. We're here with a weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. Our guests this week are Carol Kaufman, David Noble. They're the authors of Real Time Leadership. And if you want to learn more and pick up your copy of the book, I mean, of course, you can get it in all the bookie places that you know, but you can also get it on their website, rtlinstitute.com. Now, Carol, a question that I had for you. You, in Real Time Leadership, you guys talk about a model that you can use, for applying some of these leadership principles. And I know from talking with you that this is something that you're not just preaching it, you are also practicing it. And there was a particular moment that affected you where you applied this model in your own life and got some very useful results. Would you mind telling us a little bit about that circumstance and what happened?
Sure. Well, what the book is based on is how do you create space? So Viktor Frankl talks about creating a space between stimulus and response, and in that space is your freedom. And the book basically takes you into that space and opens it up with many kind of maps and frameworks and guides. And later on, we could describe the MOVE model. But one way to accelerate and create the space is something we call also the 5 C's, which is at your core, how can you develop being calm, clear, curious, compassionate, and courageous? So one day, I sort of made a mistake, and there was a business partner that I was unhappy with, but had not been altogether honest with. And so I was looking for a new business partner, or at least heading that way. And so a friend of mine helped by sending me an email that had in capital letters, "I think I have found you a new business partner," not realizing that she had BCC'd said business partner. Okay, so we all have difficult conversations, but it's even trickier when you are not an innocent party in all of this. So I got, blow your socks off texts, etc. And I'm dreading the conversation. So what did I do? Well, I have to make a confession that this is embarrassing, that I actually applied the model to myself and was shocked at how well it worked, hello. But first I went to the 5 C's of what would help me be calm. And I went through, downshifting, et cetera, what would get me off calm. Then with clear, how did I need to be clear? And when I'm in a stressful situation, I'm the opposite of David. David gets super sharp and laser focused. I'm like, what do I think? I know I think something, but I don't know what. So I sort of wrote down what were my core things. Curious, I knew I was going to get a lot of blowback, but I thought, why don't I just ask one more question? That when I get this, ask a question, be curious, and then cross over the bridge to where she is. and be compassionate with her experience, but then don't lose my own story here. So be courageous. So what happened was she did begin by blowing up. And I was able to listen, and she pivoted by saying, we should just stop talking right now. I'm being defensive, and said, let's put defensive to the side, just hear what you have to say. And then I was able to be curious and compassionate, and we wound up coming up with a brilliant plan. And we are both like closer than ever. And we just realized we had to hire another person.
That's amazing. That's a great example. Thank you very much. We're here with Carol Kaufman and David Noble. They're the authors of the new book, Real-Time Leadership. If you're enjoying this conversation, hit the like and the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well. And if you want to make sure that you're staying on top of developments and future shows, go to my website, dorieclark.com. You can sign up. You can download a free self-assessment. You'll be added to the email list, and you will get notices about great conversations like this one. Now, David, I have a question for you. One came in from our friend Abdurrahman in Morocco, and there's a lot of text here, so I will just toggle off of it here. But the basic idea, the basic question that Abdurrahman has is that in high stakes situations, decision making can be pretty daunting because you need speed, you need precision. So David, if you were advising anyone, but in particular perhaps young professionals, about how to make decisions under pressure while remaining true to their values, how do you do that? This is a tricky situation. What are the key things that you would advise someone?
Thanks, Dorie. That's a great question, Abdurrahman. So I think that if you look through our model, it's an acronym. It's called MOVE, M-O-V-E. You don't have to do the whole thing. You can sort of pick one thing that matters most to you, but just sort of scan it as I'm talking about it and figure out in this situation, if you're in a high pressure, high stakes situation, you need to make a decision fast and you need to hold to your values. So the first part is being mindfully alert to those 3 dimensions of leadership that we talked about, and in particular to that second dimension of the inner dimension of leadership, which is who do you want to be in this moment? So when you're in that moment under a lot of pressure, who do you want to be? Do you want to be that person who steps into it with grace and perspective and calm, or do you want to deregulate and get yourself into trouble and derail? So that's the first thing. So you might want to just focus on that. Then the other thing is look at O for options generation. So because everything is so nonlinear and crazy these days, you can't just have one way to win. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to navigate my way to a win here, that's not enough. You have to have what we call way power, multiple pathways to a win. So you need a way to win, a backup to your backup, and so on. So just think about creating options for yourself. So, and then we don't need to go into the V&E, but I would actually start with that 3 dimensions of leadership and look at who you want to be. Carol, you got a story about that too, right? On who do you want to be?
Yes. Are you talking about the one that is about me, or?
Yeah, with Marshall.
All right. Yes, thank you. So this can sound sort of daunting, what David is talking about, but a lot of this stuff builds on micro behavior. So as you go through the book, I mean, the book is a whole guidebook. It's like an operating manual. If you're a coach, it's like a coaching manual of what to do. There's like anything you hear here is the tiny tip of a big iceberg. So one of the things is, who do I want to be right now? And I was on something called a life plan review group with Marshall Goldsmith. With 50 CEO coaches, about eight a session. And Marshall loved this question, who do you want to be right now? And felt like it was the equivalent of 500 books on Buddhism, which is sort of beyond me. But one woman talked about, she's a CEO of a company you would know. And she talked about how, she had one of these 10-hour days, and she's going into like that 11th Zoom meeting. She's tired, she wants to get home, and she can feel the crankiness coming on. And by the way, who do you want to be right now is a cure for crankiness. But she suddenly went, wait, who do I want to be right now? And it hit her that the least important meeting of my day or my week or even my month is the most important meeting of theirs. And it really pivoted. So some of it is, as you go through, find the one question that is that split-second course correction for you.
That's really powerful. Thank you very much. If you want to learn more about David and Carol's new book, Real Time Leadership, just go to their website. You can learn more about them as well. It's RTL Institute, as in Real Time Leadership Institute.com. This is Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's Better. We're here with Carol Kaufman and David Noble. Now, David, one of the things that you've talked about in the book is about options generation. Now, this is an important piece that I think we often overlook in the frenzy of decision making. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I think I mentioned that you need way power as well as willpower. So that's more than one way to a goal. And so there's lots of ways you can apply this to the external dimension of leadership, which is what you need to get done, to the inner dimension, which is who you want to be, and to the interpersonal dimension. So I'll just give a quick example of interpersonally what an options generator would look like for that. So Carol and I have taken basic evolutionary theory of fight, flight, freeze, and also befriend, and kind of map that into a leadership framework for how do you do that when you're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, basically. Yeah. So everybody tends to have a default stance or way that they approach an interpersonal reaction. So one that we're all familiar with is this notion of leaning in. So I'm going to like really have a point of view. I'm convicted around this. I'm going to give guidance. I'm going to make a decision. So everybody knows that one. And a lot of us are using that as our default. But there's other stances that we can use which map to fight, flight, freeze, and befriend. So another one is, how about leaning back? How about instead of reacting immediately, you gather more data, you ask for more input, you consider the analysis. So that's a viable strategy as well. A third element would be lean with. And that's where you're really connecting with people, saying, I've got your back, I believe in you, I'm encouraging you, you can do this. And then the fourth stance or option, which you're creating, is to not lean at all. And that's the most difficult thing for any kind of leader, because we all have an impulse towards some kind of action. But in some cases, just taking a moment to either settle yourself and not panic, or just to see what arises in your subconscious, because there's so many things that we don't know that we know, that an answer may actually come to us, or maybe we don't actually have to act in that situation and our team will take care of it. So there's 4 options to win in an interpersonal engagement, and we tend to default to one of those things. So quick example of how this can change your leadership in a moment. One CFO was calling on the carpet a divisional CEO with missed targets. His instinct was to lean in and say, you know, you betrayed me, you've let down the entire organization, how could you do this? How can we make sure this never happens again? And he just took a moment to reflect, and he thought, okay, I'm going to take another stance. So when that divisional CEO arrived, the CFO said, this must be really difficult for you and your team. How are you all coping? And that completely changed the atmosphere from, you know, playing defense to actually having a really good conversation. So these little small changes can have disproportionately positive impacts on leadership.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much. David Noble here and Carol Kaufman, authors of Real Time Leadership. I'm Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's show Better. We want to say hi to our great friends tuning in from around the world. Please type your questions for David and Carol into the chat box. We'd love to hear them. They're talking leadership. But Maureen is here from Fargo. We have a LinkedIn friend from New York. Vicky's in England. Tanya's in the Dominican Republic. We've got Trisha in New Jersey. Meta in Copenhagen. We have Shabir in London. Lubna in Bahrain. We have Anjo from Johannesburg, Dominique in New Jersey. We have so many friends from around the world. David in Boston, Adnan in Turkey. We love having every single one of you. Now, Carol, something that I've always been curious about, you have been a professor at Harvard Medical School for 25 years. When we think about coaching, we don't necessarily think about the medical school. So, and you also are a founder of the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. How did these pieces fit together? How did you get coaching to be part of this portfolio? What is the story?
Well, there's a couple aspects to it. One is just logistics. We could have connected with the medical school. We could have connected to the business school, the Kennedy School. Well, the difference is that the medical school I have gotten a lot of favors done over the years, and they would take only 15%, as opposed to the business school and the Kennedy School, which would take a very large thing. But it all happened one day when I won coaching. As that's how I started in coaching. I went to a workshop and I won tuition. And at that moment, what happened is I felt like this is like a really important moment. I could have had no idea. And so I thought, okay, so I did a lean back moment, which is not easy for me. And I thought, okay, if there's a lesson for me right here, right now, what is it? And what came to me were the words, don't hold back, which I want to say to everyone, if anybody's going to get in your way, please don't let it be you. So I immediately had one thought. And so somebody said something and I thought, oh, presenting at ICF, I'd like to do that. And the person who said it went, you? Like, that's a long shot, Carol. Okay, fine. So I did, and don't hold back replaced confidence for me. And then what happened is I ran into this woman who heard me, Ruth Ann Harnish, who first became my coach and then gave me $2 million to start the Institute of Coaching. And so because I was based at the medical school and they would do the best business model, but also McLean Hospital was where we were, and they're very innovative. They've started a number of things. So they were very open-minded and ready to embrace the Institute.
What a fascinating origin story. I love that. Thank you, Carol. That's great. And we want to say hi to Juan, who's tuning in from Monterrey, Mexico. Sushma's in India and Irina's in Belgrade. We love having all of you. Hit the like and share button if you'd like your friends and colleagues to benefit from the conversation. Now, David, something that I am curious about, as you know, I do a lot of work in strategic thinking, long-term thinking, and what I often get asked by clients or people who are curious about this, and this is something that I know that you and Carol talk about in real-time leadership as well, is how to thread the needle between executing on a long-term vision, which might take years to come to fruition, and balancing that with the short-term day-to-day pressures that everybody faces. Would you mind talking a little bit more about your thoughts on that?
Sure. No, that's a great question, Dorie. So first of all, I think what's different about the methodology that Carol and I have is that we unite the strategic and commercial with the behavioral. So normally those two worlds are quite separate. It's like I've got issues around my personal leadership or leadership of my team versus issues about where do I take this company or organization. So we pull those things together, and the way it comes together is in that 3 dimensions of leadership. So we think strategy is all about the first dimension of leadership. What is it that you want or need to get done? And for us, it's being absolutely crystal clear on that, because you don't want to waste a moment, because any kind of change is hard, right? So you don't want to be going in the wrong direction or working on things that fundamentally don't matter. So the first thing is just being crystal clear on what your goals are. And that, the better you can name the goals, the more likely you are to achieve them and also to be focused on them. So we urge you to kind of start at the end, which is like, what's your most important long-term goal? And then actually write it down in terms of the who, what, when, where, and why. It's like really flesh that out so that you really can see that goal coming alive. Then ask yourself, is that really the most important thing that I've got? Or am I exaggerating or discounting certain threats or opportunities that I'm seeing? Or am I actually completely missing the point? So it's like being crystal clear on that is the first thing. Then the next step is visualize what a 10 out of 10 outcome is on that. So what would it look like? What would it feel like to you? What would people be saying about you and the accomplishments? So that's kind of it's a kind of North Star perspective, not a North Star behavior. That's the second and third dimension, but it's a North Star for the first dimension. So you're always referring back to that and doing what matters most, not what's most urgent.
Really helpful. Thank you. That's David Noble. He's here with Carol Kaufman. They're the authors of Real-Time Leadership. We want to say hi to Eugenia, who's joining from Costa Rica. Alicia's in Berkeley. And we are so glad all of you are here. I also wanted to make a program note for everyone, which is that since August of 2020, so for about 2.5 years, we have had weekly sessions with Better. This is actually going to be our last weekly live stream session. The show will continue. Newsweek Better will continue, but it is no longer going to be in live stream format. Newsweek is going to actually also change the format a little bit, because in addition to going to a sort of video kind of podcast format, we're also going to be shifting to talk a little bit more about diversity and inclusion issues. So stay tuned for that. If you want to make sure that you never miss one of our subsequent episodes, make sure to follow me online Go to DorieClark.com. You can sign up for my newsletter and self-assessments, and you will be notified about everything so that we can stay in touch. But in the meantime, we're very excited to be featuring David and Carol as our last guests for this format of Better. Now, Carol, a question that I have for you comes in from our friend and regular viewer, Anna, in New Hampshire. And she wants to know, okay, this is a very tall question, so I will also toggle off here. She says that, as leaders are being asked to assess things and respond quickly and effectively, there's a lot of difficulties. And she wants to get your perspective about how do you remain optimistic and grounded, even when you might encounter some of these challenges or difficulties in what you're trying to accomplish.
Great. Well, read the book. But one of the things that we pull on, one of the multiple theories we pull on is positive psychology. And we also have a coaching model. So let me actually walk you through the coaching model. So how to stay optimistic under fire in a way with everything that's going on. So first we would do kind of what David talked about, which is if you were a 10 out of 10 on being able to do this, what would it look like? What would you be doing if there was a film crew? What would they be seeing? What would you be feeling? Like really paint a vivid picture of if you were able to do this, building on you, what would that look like? Then if that's your 10 out of 10, what are you now? So let's say you're a 6. The next question is, what are you doing right that you are not a 5? And then really ask yourself that a lot, like over and over and over. And this is a model you can use coaching others, but coaching yourself. So really be thinking through, when have you been successful in the past? What are you doing now? So keep exploring that. And then think, okay, over the next month or two, how could I get from a 6 to a 7? So really pulling on your successes. And then don't forget those 5 C's. That's the other thing, is when something's hit you, find your go-to 5C. Like for me, it's connected to, okay, who do I want to be right now? Like not freak out, but it also may be, I really want to stay looking and being calm or kind. So find the micro behavior unlock, but try that self-coaching model.
Really excellent. Thank you very much. We have time for probably just 2 more questions. We're going to do one more each for David and for Carol. Again, we're here with Carol Kaufman, David Noble, authors of Real-Time Leadership. David, one of the things that you talk about in Real-Time Leadership is what you call driving 10x change. Now, this sounds very sexy. I think lots of people would like to drive 10x change. What do you mean by that? And how could a person begin to do that?
Sure. Okay. Well, that is a long topic, but we've got a couple of chapters in the book for it. So I think the first premise is just that recognize that whatever your dreams are right now, think about them and amplify them by 10. So it's really an inspirational call to action to really be a big dreamer. So what would that look like and what would that feel like? And there's ways that you can start with that. So normally you just start with like, well, what are the kind of disruptive forces that I'm seeing in the world, whether it's in technology through AI, for example, or whether it's through big demographic trends or big societal trends. And how can I kind of piggyback off that with my business or whatever it is I'm doing and make the most of it? Because that's the kind of the easiest way to attach yourself to a rocket ship that's going to go 10x. So I think there's the dreaming part. And then as Carol said, it's like understanding where you're at. Now, the gap between a starting point and a 10x kind of goal is huge. So the way you do that and chunk that down into something that's manageable is you take the very first tiny step towards that. It's a micro behavior. It's like, if I take this step and if it's in the direction that's going to support my 10x goal, great, I'm going to keep going and take another step. If it's not, I'm going to change direction and try something else. So that's basically how you sort of square up the difference between 10x and where you're at today.
Love that. Fantastic. And our very last question goes to Carol Kaufman. Carol, what can someone, a leader or an individual contributor, whoever they are, but if someone is watching this interview today, what can they do? What is one step they can take to become a better real-time leader?
Wow. I would say, as you read the book, find the thing that sings to you, because what will unlock you, Dorie, is different from what unlocks David, is different from what unlocks me. We all learn in different ways. and we have different histories. So what I would do is don't put the burden on yourself like, oh, I should go through all of MOVE or I should do the 5 C's. See what sings to you, and what is it that, what is the thing out there? What does it want you to do? And I would just say that, be really true to yourself and open and alert, but really what is it that will work for you? And then if you're not sure, try a ton of things.
I love that. That is good advice for life in general. If you're not sure, try a ton of things. I am fully down with that. Thank you so much. We have been here with David Noble and Carol Kaufman. They are the authors of the book Real-Time Leadership. If you want to learn more about them and their work, get your copy of the book, go to rtlinstitute.com. And if you want to make sure that we can stay in touch, because again, this is the last weekly live stream version of Better, although it is not the last Better. There will be recorded versions into the future with Newsweek, but this is the last weekly live stream. So if you want to stay in touch, make sure you sign up for my email list and self-assessment. Go to dorieclark.com, input your email address so we can stay in touch. But I want to especially thank David and Carol and all of you for 2.5 years who have tuned in so regularly. I'm really grateful. Thank you to all of you. And David and Carol, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dorie.
Thank you, Dorie. This was lovely.
Take care, everyone, and see you later. Bye.